Hello, I'm Nancy Smith Mattox on WYTV7 in Charlotte. I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas, broadcasting for Shine Your Light Radio Ministry. I'm so excited to be here. We have a beautiful young woman that's our guest today. It's going to really enlighten you, some of the things that she shares with us today. Before we start, I'd like to say that we are WYTV7 is a nonprofit. We do take donations, and what we say is if we touch one, we've done our jobs. And then another way to touch people is with a $5 donation. We can actually use that money to broadcast these internationally, all of our shows. So it really makes us have an international audience. So I'm really excited about that. So if you so feel a desire, please plant a seed in WYTV7. Without further ado, let me introduce who we have today as our special guest. Her name is Monique Young. She is a published author, and she also is her sister's keeper, is what she says. She's also a comedian too. The name of her book is It Worked For Me, Tips for 4 Millennial Daughters. So if that tells you any indication what kind of woman she is, that she's got 4 daughters that she's raising, we're going to have a lot of fun tonight with that, because millennials are millennials, if you know what I mean. So, but anyway, without further ado, tell us a little bit about yourself, Miss Monique.
Hi, how are you? Well, that was a mouthful right there. I am the mother of 4 daughters. They range from 16 to 30. So, I mean, I have already experienced probably everything that you could experience as a mom, from one end to the other. I mean, they are definitely 4 individual with young women that have definitely unique talents and gifts. And they're very tricky. So it's taken a lot of strategy over the years to make sure everything worked out just right.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you were and where you've been, and a little bit about your testimony, what brought you where you are today.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so on the eve of turning 50, I prayed and I prayed to God for my direction, my purpose, because you often hear the question, what is my purpose? But do we really know it, or do we even seek it? So in that process, God spoke to me and said, thoughts for your daughters. That was the original thought that came to mind, that came from him. But I was like, what would I do with that? But as with anything that God gives you, he's going to give you direction. He's going to constantly be poking you to go this way or that way to get to where he wants you to go. So it started out like with telling my first lady. Then her telling me about someone that wrote a book, then another referral to someone that is an editor, so it just was a trickle down effect. So I ultimately got to take all those thoughts and put them together. And I met a wonderful publisher, self-publishing maven, Robin Devonish, who put it all together, who showed me how to take all my thoughts and make them into a book. I've been married. I've been with the same man for 32 years now. So we've been happily married for 24 of those years. So, my process has been consistent and it has been steady and growing, but I thought that at this point in my life, it was some time for me to explore some of the things that I would have, enjoyed to do.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. It's an accomplishment just being married 32 years in this day and time.
Yes,
Plus, I have 4 beautiful children too.
Yes.
Of course, my son is a little older than I only had the courage to have one, but I have 2 grandsons, and one of them is 13 and one of them is 11. And believe it or not, they're not millennial age yet, but the 13-year-old acts like a millennial,
Right.
and he's he's just a precious boy. He's very, very smart, very, very athletic, but he can sure trick me into doing things that as his grandma that make it infuriates his parents. And my son is always telling me, Mother, you're letting him con you, you're letting him talk you into doing things. I'm saying, well, when he asks me to do things, he's so polite.
Right, yes.
It's
funny that you say that, because I just had my first grandson. He's 3, and forget about it. First of all, I know now that I was meant to be a grandmother to a boy, not the mother. I realized that, because when you really think about it, like, he probably would have, my son probably would have tricked me into so many things because, it's the relationship is definitely different. You know what I'm saying? The chemistry is different. He is so, like you said, he's so polite and charming that I don't even know if I would be able to discipline him if it was my son. I would be like, he didn't mean it.
Exactly.
So,
My sister, I live in Little Rock, Arkansas, and she lives in Tampa, Florida. We
okay.
moved up here. We moved to Little Rock probably 15, 16 years ago, but we were
Okay.
close while I was in Florida living. And, I always thought her children were mine. She had two girls. They were younger
Okay.
than my son, and she always thought she was my son's second mother. But we used to sit and talk when they turned teenagers, and I'm like, I don't know how you do it.
Right.
And I don't know how your husband of all these years puts up with three women in the house. I mean, I just
Right.
can't even imagine how difficult that is to have to have
Uh,
five women in the house to deal with. So I know you got a lot of good stories you're going to share with us, but my sister and I often talked about how different it was for me to raise my son and her to raise
right.
her daughters. Very different. She just sometimes would get a little jealous of me because it just seems like there's a special relationship between mothers and sons that
Hmm.
they're just charming and polite. And I'm not saying they all do good, not saying they're 100% good, but
Right.
the relationship is really different than
Right.
mothers and
It's
daughters.
chemistry. Right. Like I
And
said, it's
those
chemistry.
daughters, oh my goodness, my nieces, they just ran their parents through the ringers. I'm like, I'm so glad I have a son. But
Right.
anyway, let's get back. Let's get back to your millennial daughters. Let's talk a little bit about raising them and how that went. I'm glad you had a husband to help you. I didn't know if you were a single mother or not. But that's awesome to have a
Yes.
husband. But for a husband to have to put up with five women in the in the
It's
household.
it's so funny. I say in the book how my husband said PMS wasn't real. I said, really? Really? You want to go with that? So once he got past that, he learned that yeah, PMS is real. You know what too? I think that he learned how over the years that it's gonna be different. You know what I'm saying? Like things change. Like naturally when they were little girls, he was the king, he could do nothing wrong. It was daddy, daddy, daddy. I would sometimes be like, really? I'm the one that's in here, but then the switch comes. They become teenagers, they become more opinionated. They don't want to do all the things. Like he still got them in a box sometimes as little girls. And I have to tell them that, remember, I want you to be their first boyfriend. So I need you to show them how it's supposed to be. The example of how you treat me naturally is number one, because how he treats me is going to show them how they should be treated. So that's one thing. But two, I want you to have some kind of empathy for them, because sometimes I think men think that we're emotional, so they don't want to deal with that sometimes. So over the years, I think that he definitely became more softer and learned that, they're girls and they just don't think like you do, and then men think that protecting us is what they have to do and providing for us. They sometimes lack sometimes in the emotional part. But I think that as the years have gone by, he's gotten a lot better with trying to connect with them, and definitely understand that they're not him and they don't think
Well,
like he does.
it's so appropriate, especially in this day and time, and it seems to be becoming more and more of an issue, especially with a lot of single moms raising their
Mm-hmm.
children and not having a daddy figure in there. They really
Right,
don't know how a man is supposed to treat a woman.
right,
And I think that's so important what you said about, teaching your husband that the example that he uses with you and how he treats you is how
right.
they're going to expect men to treat them. And that's so important
Exactly.
in this day and time. It just seems like there's such a brashness and it's just not gentlemanly. The culture to not be a gentleman is no
Right.
longer there, obviously, because of whatever reason. But I
Yes.
think that's really an important point that we need to make is that, and I'm sure your book will explain this really well for people, that are trying to raise daughters and trying
Right.
to especially deal with millennials, because how they're treated and how they allow people to treat them like you as the mother will rub off on them on how they should be treated. And I think that's just so important because there's so much mischief out there right now. There's so much abuse and
Right.
domestic violence. I'm like, it's just really sad to
It
me.
is.
And that's the example that they get.
But you know what I think? That I think we've gotten away from expectations. You know what? I think that because people just go by the seat of their pants, sort of like just moving from one thing to another, they don't stop to realize that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be treated like that, or I don't really like that, or even having a set of expectations. I once asked my daughter, like, what are your, what do you expect from a man? And it was almost like a dumb look. And I was like, wow, like, what did I miss? What are you missing? But you know what? Sometimes what you don't say means everything. You can't assume they know what you can't assume that they get it, or you can't assume that they understand what they should expect, or what's tolerable versus what's not tolerable, what to expect versus what not to accept. Expect and accept are two different words, and you have to learn. But like I said, I think verbalizing it, I speak to in my book, like, about virginity. I say that don't let a 15-year-old boy be the one to explain to your daughter the importance of her body and her value. But if you don't say it, then you can't know what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just leave it out there to chance.
That was part of the problems, I think, as I was growing up and in my age. I'm a product of the 60s. So I'm like, I can remember my mother not explaining things to me.
Right.
Talking to me, and parents just didn't talk to their children. So I'm happy to hear you say that that's what part of the key of what your book is talking to your children and letting them know what the expectations are, because if you don't talk to them about it, you don't know. I mean, luckily, I did well. I've been married 46 years and I'm an older woman now, but I'm like, that could have very easily gone the old way from the 60s, because in the 60s you had the drugs and the violence and just everything. But, some of us made it through that, doing the right thing. But I think another thing that we got to discuss is really disrespect in this day and time, as well as not being kind to one another, whether it's boys and girls or women to women or siblings. People have lost that mentality of being good to people, being nice to people. Really the great commission of what we're supposed to do.
Yes.
So I think that's really important.
That's why in my book, I speak to sisterhood. Like, I'm a woman that loves other women. Like, I want to see my sister do just as good as I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? I want to see her, like I tell my daughters every day, when she wins, you don't lose. You can congratulate, you can cheerlead, you can do all that you would want done for you. I was raised by a single mom, and my mother put a very strong impression upon me about sisterhood, about respecting other women, respecting what they have, respecting their space. Like, I tell my daughters, if he's with somebody, he can't be with you. How could that be? First of all, we don't practice to be his woman. Either we are or we are not. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't, while she's in that position, you're not behind her, studying her moves so that when she is gone, you could be her, because there's nothing good going to come from that. And that's not how we operate. But I think that because, once again, we don't say these things out loud, we don't tell our daughters, sometimes don't just automatically assume that they're going to know the right thing to do in the situation. I tell my daughters all the time, we are not at all understudies. We do not study or practice anyone's part. When we are there, that's when we are there, and we will do what we are told to do and commissioned to do. First of all, God sent someone for everybody. So don't worry. I always tell them all the time, don't worry. There is someone for you.
Exactly.
So when you're feeling like, why not me, or why is she in a relationship and I'm not, it's because that's not your time. But in God's timing, it will come, And when you were saying earlier about being together so long, so sometimes I worry about my girls, because me and my husband, I was 19 and he was 25, so 24. So different time, but he was ready. So we've been together our whole childhood. But now my daughters are coming into those years, and they're like, well, why didn't I meet anybody? So sometimes, you try to show them something good in front of them, but then sometimes it can create like a why not, or why not me? But I tell them, if it happened to me, it can happen to you. God doesn't do anything singularly. Really. You know what I'm saying? There's an opportunity for all of us, and it's coming. You just have to be patient and wait. So.
Well, it seems like we've gone full circle, because we went there for a while, like in the 60s and 70s,
right,
to where people were getting married young, and they were making it, and some didn't make it. Divorce became very prevalent because they got married too young.
Right.
And now we've gone full circle where people are waiting later on in life to get married because they haven't found the right person yet. And I really believe that's all of God's plan. I mean, God wants you to find yourself, be yourself, and find your compatible partner. And that takes time, and that takes effort. But I tell you what, if we keep God in our life and we keep focused,
all things are possible.
Happen. That is exactly right.
And not that though, I think that I agree partially with the waiting, but I think waiting till the time is right is always. But I'm saying sometimes I think that when two people grow together, like how me and my husband, we kind of found our way together. So it kind of made a little bit, our stumbling blocks weren't as detrimental because we were both growing up. You know what I mean? Like, I think that sometimes when one of you is too mature, or, when they're not equally yoked, it is, it's a tried and true statement. If you're not equally yoked, you're not going to make it anyway. If you go in thinking that if it doesn't work, it's not. If it doesn't work, it's not going to work. Because if you go in with that's an alternative or an option, then you're never going to give it what you're supposed to give it. But if you go in saying that this is the man that I'm going to marry, this is who God sent me, and if you believe it, then it's going to work. Because those times when you feel like giving up,
yeah, absolutely.
Fight, and when he feels like giving up, you'll fight. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different mentality when you go in saying that this is what we're going to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely takes work, and it's nice to hear you bring scripture into it, because you do need to be equally yoked. I mean, that's scriptural, and you do need that. And if you understand that, it just makes everything easier. So,
and even in my book, I write to have a relationship with God, because if you don't have, it doesn't have to be God. I do believe whoever you believe in or whatever you believe in. For me, it's God. I believe in the Trinity, you know what I'm saying? But that's me. I'm not forcing it upon anybody, because God gives us free will. So I'm going to give you your free will as well. But what I will say is that you need to have some kind of connection. You need to know some kind of spiritual base, somewhere you could breathe in, somewhere you could say, you know what, I need help. And that you feel that it's coming, and that even when you just release it, and that's that feeling of peace that surpasses all understanding, that you can have a place of just serenity, that you can just say, okay, even though my situation hasn't changed, but my feelings have. And sometimes that's enough.
Yes, absolutely. But we don't teach, a lot of people don't teach their children that,
Right.
They don't teach them. And that's why I think your book is really so important. I think a lot of people, especially, parents of daughters, really do need to read this book and understand a lot about how you've raised them and what you've taught them. Because are they really successful in their lives? Tell us a little about the girls.
Okay, so the oldest daughter, she's 30. She lives in Virginia. She's an assistant director of a program for adults with disabilities. So money-wise, not the greatest feel in the world, but I am godly pleased that I have raised a child that could be that compassionate. You know what I'm saying? Like, she spent her whole adult life in that field. Like, she really loves them. Like, she is the voice for them when no one else will speak. You know what I mean? So for me, that no matter what, I'm proud of who she is. Like I tell her all the time, like, that's a God-chosen work. That's a work. You are doing kingdom building, because not too many people can even, understand them, much less want to be in their presence on a daily basis, because they think that they're less than what they are. But they are the purest form of love that you can find, because, see, they don't have any prerequisites. You love them, they love you, period. That's it. That's all. You know what I mean? They don't have the rest of the stuff that we have. They're going straight for the chaser. Like, what do you have? You love me, I love you. And then my second daughter, she's also a manager, same field but different. She works with teenagers with emotional problems. So once again, another job that's God chosen. You know what I'm saying? So to me, it makes my heart feel good, because they get up in the morning, they want to go to work. They look forward to seeing their clients. So to me, that is my gift to them. My gift to them was always get a job choose a career that's not a job. That when you go to it, that you would enjoy, and that you would get some fulfillment out of it. because some of us work places that we're not fulfilled. We just need their paycheck. Let's be honest. We do our due diligence to try to make it a nice place, but at the end of the day, it's really not our chosen work. It's, more or less what we have to do.
Well, there's an old saying, and I spent 25 years at a credit union helping people, so that's all I've done all my life is helping people.
Okay.
There is an old saying that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And that's
true.
exactly how I felt. I started out in the early days helping people,
Nice.
and then it developed and developed. And so all my life, that's all I've ever done is help people. As a matter of fact, that's what Shine Your Light's all about. It's so that people can get on like you and promote yourself, promote what you're doing, promote your book, and shine your light so other people, so it'll be a light to other people. I mean, I just think it's so important, even now. I'm 65 years old, and I still do that. I still want to help people, and I scope them out, and I find them, and if I find them to be interesting, I want to get their story on the air. And it is publicized internationally on WYTV7, so it's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah.
So, my prayer is always that people will watch this show, Shine Your Light, and they'll understand that it's not about me, it's about me helping other people shine their light. So that's kind of what it's all about. And, it's just, I don't know why God gives us all talents. And, that was a talent he gave me, was to help people. And that's just what I do. I love to do that. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. So I think it's a good thing that you brought your girls up like that, because there's always going to be a need for that compassionate person.
Yes.
And you got to have passion if you're doing it. But if you love what you're doing, you never work a day in your life. And that's exactly what it sounds like they're doing. So that's kind of neat.
And that was really what my...
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the book. And the name of the book is It Worked for Me, Tips for Raising Millennial Daughters.
Yes.
So tell us about the book, what started it, and how you evolved into it, and really how God got involved for you to do the book, because I know it had to be God driven. So
yes. Okay, so I'll show you. Okay, so this is the book. So if you see, I'm putting it. Okay, so It Worked for Me. It starts out with letters that I wrote to my daughters. Okay, so when they were born, literally, I tried to do it within at least 48 hours of them being born. I wrote them letters, just basically they're saying what I saw, like, I love you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I will do all I can to make you a great person. Like, I spoke into them whatever God spoke into me. Like, I told them that, you will be christened. I will give you back to God who gave you to me. I spoke things into their life. Like, you will not, I rebuke drugs. I rebuke alcoholism. I rebuke everything that could hurt you. But that's how I began their journey. Like, that's how I wrote to them. But myself, my mom died when I was 5. Like, it would have been nice if she would have wrote me a letter. So at least as I grew up, I could have had some idea of what her thoughts or expectations were for me. I'm sure she had great things that she wanted for me, but still, it would have just been nice. Like, I don't know what her handwriting looked like. You know what I mean? Like, just something just so simple that so many people take for granted. That's something I don't have. I never will have. You know what I mean? So for me, that was, to me, like my cleansing for me with my girls. And then I say for women that don't bring a live baby out of the operating room, or their baby only lives for a few minutes or a few hours, write a letter to that baby. Because even though it was only for a few minutes, it's therapeutic. Cleanse yourself of those emotions, because you may have other children, and then you could share what you felt for that baby in that moment with them. Or even if you never have another baby, you had a baby, you have a child, you are a mother, you can write your child a letter. You know what I mean? Like, I think that that's a very beautiful way to begin your child's life, is to speak it and write it in word. It's like legacy. You're leaving them something that they can have and they can hold on to, because we're not going to be here forever. We would like to be here forever, but we won't.
That's an excellent idea. I know in the old days, my son he'll be 42 in December, but when he was born in 1977, the thing to do was to have a baby book.
Yes.
You documented in the baby book everything that happened. He smiled today, or he cooed today, or when he said dada, and you documented all that in this leather-bound baby book. I mean, and I
Yes.
put locks of his hair in there. I did everything, pictures of him, and that.
Okay.
And then when he got grown, I gave him that as a legacy for when he was born. So it's
Right.
basically about the same thing. I mean, writing a letter to your baby. How beautiful is that? And it really
Right.
hits home when you say your mother died when you were 5, and you
Right.
you didn't even know how she wrote. You didn't know what her handwriting was like. I mean,
Right.
that's fabulous. That's a fabulous thing to offer.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so just something this simple. It's nothing that's going to take you forever. But just imagine that, one day you're not here. They can open up that letter and, actually they've heard my voice, so they can actually hear me saying the words that are on that paper. You know what I mean? So to me, but even this book is legacy. Like if I sell 500 or 5 million, it's still written, it's there, it's out there, it'll never go away. So my grandchildren will pick it up one day and say, let's see what worked for grandma, or let's see, what I mean? So it's the
Absolutely.
legacy,
Yeah.
but I speak to parent guilt. One of my children was injured as a baby. I was riding my exercise bike, she doing too much stuff and got her hand caught. So I had to get over the guilt of a perfect baby to injury, but God had to work me through that, and that's why I tell you that you need God, like you need spiritual grounding, because there are going to be situations in this parenting thing. It don't come with a book. It don't tell you how to deal with situations and times. So you need to have that, that go-to place. So for me, it was in my prayer and in my praise that God released that from me and let me know that, listen, things happen. That's why I made the word accident. You didn't do it on purpose. It was nothing that was meant to be, but I used her. Then I had to realize too, he was going to use her for that, for a time like this, to show the world things could happen to you. You could have a defect or something that's not perfection, but still be, still be used, still be glorifying God through the process.
Absolutely. And, I think that's really important in this day and time and in the type of culture and environment that we're in. A lot of times young girls don't realize their worth. And if
Right.
they haven't been brought up like that, they really don't realize that they're worth more than gold. And they do not
Yes.
realize that
You're
right
a
now.
gift. You are a
But I
gift.
like it because I also read where you said that the book, it worked for me. Tips for raising millennial daughters is a millennial parent guide, a
Yes.
millennial parent manual. So I love that. I think that's just
Right.
fantastic. I think a lot of people should take advantage and read this book and understand the trials that you went through with 4 daughters
Yes.
and the disappointments as well as the
There's high,
celebrations.
right? Because believe me, there's highs and lows. Everything ain't high. God don't make us that way. We're not meant to just be always up and never down. But how you handle your down is what's going to make the difference in your testimony. I stand before you and I tell you, I've raised 4 beautiful daughters. They've never been in jail. They haven't hurt anyone. They don't look to hurt people. I teach them about kindness. But what I tell if I can give you a gift tonight for every mother and father, compromise. Don't stay so set in what you think, because God don't do that to us. He don't stay set. He gives us chances. He forgives us. Sometimes our kids are going to do things that are outside of what we wanted them to do. But you have to be ready to compromise, because you're not going to win thinking that you can control them. You're not going to win, because what's going to happen is resentment's going to walk in, and then they're going to do more things to show you. So rather than have it become a competition, you're smarter than them. I always tell my kids and I tell my friends, we're much smarter than them. We don't
Mhm.
have to fight the way they want to fight. They want to be combative, and they want to show their strength. They want to show you they could do it their way. And no, I don't want you to hurt yourself showing me. That's not
Exactly.
who's winning with that. You know what I'm saying? So if at the end of the day, all I can say is that I never bent my rule. 16, you date more then and never before. What will I win if I stay by that? But she's pregnant because she snuck. We didn't have a discussion. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't be afraid to compromise, because you're smarter than them. You can out strategize them. You can make them think they've won when you're really still in control of the situation. So many times I bend the rules just so that I can show her that I can compromise with you, so that this way she would give me an opportunity to be a part of whatever she's thinking or doing. So by me compromising led to conversation. And that conversation led to us getting to an amicable solution, and not just her,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? Her fighting against the rules. per
Mhm.
se.
That's such wise judgment and such wise words that you say and you share. We're almost out of time, but I have one more question that I want to ask you.
Sure.
What's your favorite Bible scripture? And
This
you
is the
don't have to
day.
call the scripture, but just the
But yeah, right.
generality.
What I love is this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. You know why? Because God gives us daily mercies, daily grace. So I say to myself, I have to remind myself that this day, because so often we're worried about everything, but really God only tells us that this is the day, because it is just today, our daily bread, because that's really what it is. Tomorrow may come, but it's not guaranteed. So I try to stay in this day and make the best of it and try to do something new. You know, if I felt like I failed at something yesterday, I know if I get a new day, I get an opportunity to do a different thing.
Wow, that's
So that's what
beautiful.
works for me.
I love that. I always love that part of the interview because everybody has their own special scripture that they
Right.
do. But I love that. Well, you've been a complete joy. You've given us a lot of information. Hold the
Yes.
book up one more time for us because
Okay.
we're almost out of time.
Okay.
And it worked for me. And it's about 4 millennial daughters that she raised. So please
Yes.
tell us, Miss Monique, how we can get a hold of you or how we can order the book and that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, the book is on Amazon. The book is on Barnes and Nobles, but also my website is www.
Go ahead.
Sorry, www.momma Monique.com. So you can
Okay.
book me for speaking engagements, comedy. I also do comedy. You can get the book. I have T-shirts. So anything you want. I'm so sorry.
Okay, perfect. That's perfect. Well, we are out of time, and I thank you again so much for sharing with us and letting us know
Yes.
how it went. I know that your words of wisdom are going to help a lot of people. So I
Thank you.
appreciate you being on the show and giving us some time and some excellent tips on how to raise millennial daughters. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. All righty.